Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on this edition of Coronatined with a Copywriter. Today, I have the Conversion Copywriter Specialist, Joel Klettke. Thanks so much for tuning in today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, of course. So before we get started on some of the questions for today, do you mind just giving all of the viewers a brief overview of kind of what you do and maybe some of your accomplishments?
Yeah, sure. So my job, companies come to me to solve the problem of they're already getting traffic, but they want it to convert better. So let's say they have 1,000 people coming to their site a day. Of that 1,000, 2 people buy. My job is not to get 2,000 people to show up. It's to get 4 people to buy, or 8 people to buy, or 10 people to buy. So my job is kind of this marriage between data and analysis and talking to people and doing research, which usually takes a lot of my time, and then writing and creativity and positioning and sort of turning all of this intelligence on the human behavior side into messaging that gets more people to take action. So I work with a lot of B2B companies. My specialty is software. But I do a lot with like agencies themselves. So writing agency sites, writing software sites, and just B2B in general. I don't do any, say, e-commerce and B2C. And I work primarily on like websites, landing pages, sometimes email series. And in terms of accomplishments, I've been super lucky to work with some really cool brands. So I helped HubSpot on a major overhaul of their core marketing site that wound up doubling conversions. I work with a company called divorceonline.co.uk. It's one of the fewer B2C clients that I have, and they saw an increase of $165,000 US a year.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I didn't write a word for them. All I did was an audit and make recommendations, and they made 2 15-minute fixes. So that's the power of communication. That's the power of looking at the data and turning that into copy and kind of understanding how people interact. So stories like that are what get me excited. But what I really love about what I do is there's always some new problem to solve. Every new project, it's not boilerplate, oh, just do X, Y, Z. There's formulas and frameworks, but I really get to dig into the people side and understand how people make decisions and translate that into how brands communicate.
Wow. Okay. That's awesome. Thanks so much for that explanation. And that's really cool. Some of the things that you've been able to do. I did have just a random question that would maybe allow me and some of the viewers to get to know you a bit more. You are definitely one of my favorite accounts to follow on Facebook and LinkedIn because you always are sharing all sorts of, I would say, insightful and also like comical posts. And it's a breath of fresh air combination. Need that in the world. So I was wondering, if you had a billboard, what would be on it?
Oh man, good question. Like I could put anything there?
You could put anything you wanted.
Huh. That's a good question. I think I would probably have something like, I'm trying to think of the wording for it. This is like the least eloquent thing.
That's
This
all
is like a
right.
sappy response, but this is probably, I'd try to find a nice, succinct way to tell people to stop and smell the roses, or that like
Okay.
life's happening right now. Cause I think I'd find a funnier way to do it, but I think something that like, especially as a dad now, I'm conscious of is like, I think so many people don't realize that your day to day like is your life.
Okay.
Like we're always thinking out to the future or reflecting on the
Yeah.
past, but it's pretty
Okay.
rare that we stop and like, so I love when I'm able to like have the presence of mind to like catch myself in a moment, be like, oh man, this is going to be so cool to look back on, like, especially with my son, like when we go for a walk to the mailbox, I try to like mentally record all that stuff. So that's like the really like sappy versions. I'd find some way to like try to grab people by the collar and be like, hey, wake up, like you're alive and like cool things are happening. That, or I'd probably just like put like my face on it and like encourage balding men to
Yeah.
like just
Okay.
go all the way.
Okay.
Just shave it down.
Just
Because that's like a crime against humanity, is to just persist with like the comb overs or like the peach fuzz. Just get rid of it.
Yeah.
Like you're
Okay.
not fooling anyone. You don't have like sexy camouflage. Like everybody
Yeah.
knows. Just like grab that razor, do your thing. So that'd be the copy. I just have my head, and that'd be grab that razor, do your thing.
Cut that razor
I'd
down.
leave it to people to figure it out.
Be for body man and for 14-year-old boys with their first mustache. They're just like, just shave it off.
Yeah. Yeah. You're
Wow.
just, I think hair in general is like overconfidence, or like you always think
Mm.
your hair is like, unless you know you've got like really, I mean, like a beautiful coif. I think like your facial hair or your like comb over is always just going to be something you try to hide behind, but you don't fool anybody with. It's just like
Mm.
take charge of your body hair. This is going a weird direction. Let's just leave it there.
That's all right. Wow. No, but I loved I love that message. That was really cool. And I felt, well, considering the days that we're currently in, a very relevant message because a lot of people, and I think it's hard just in general as an entrepreneur because you just kind of are always looking, yeah, you're looking to like what is the next thing, but
Right.
that could be, well, for most people, that's like a year. Those are years of journey that you're going to be on. And if you're only
Right.
living for when you make it, you're just going to miss out on a bunch of life.
Yeah. I mean, that's the curse of ambition too, right? Is like you have to be ambitious, I think, to be successful as an entrepreneur. I don't know a whole lot of like people who don't care about anything who like wind up doing great things. But at the same time, like one of the biggest concepts that I've dealt with and continue to, and a lot of my friends who, let's say, like quote unquote successful people, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
what's your enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what's enough? How do you define that for yourself? Because the reality is, we probably all heard some format of this at some point in our lives. There's always going to be someone making more than you, better at
Mm-hmm.
your craft than you, more popular than you, better liked than you. There's always going to be someone up the ladder, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to realize like you right now are on someone else's rung.
Mm-hmm.
Someone is looking up wishing they were in the position you were in, or wishing that they had done what you've done. And I know for a lot of people it's not going to feel that way,
Mm-hmm.
but it's, if you just treat it like this endless chasing of like the next thing, the next thing, the
Mm-hmm.
next thing, then I'll be happy, then I'll be successful. I think that's what happens to ambitious people when it goes unchecked. And so at some point, I do think it really is important to just stop, take a breath, look around at what you've created for yourself. If you like it, savor it. If you don't, decide to change it. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm a pretty big advocate of being able to have this kind of discussion because I feel like this is where like a lot of people are at. Like they wake up and these are we all kind of have like the one day I won't be
Right.
screwed over by, the college student version of a client. But
Right.
it's just kind of, yeah, at the same time, like you said, if you don't define kind of what your success, like you're okay with, you'll
Right.
never make it. When my wife and I, we moved here to Australia a couple of years back, and it's awesome. I love my life, but it was crazy because within about 6 months, I could tell that I was like, all right, this is great, but I could find myself very quickly looking for something else, and that horrified me.
Right.
I was like, oh my goodness, this is what we've been working for. Like
Yeah.
this is the life that we were really hoping for. And I'm not
Yeah.
over it, but I can see like a spirit of discontent that it's just kind of hanging back there, that if I don't be proactive, I'm gonna like wake up one day and be dissatisfied again,
Right.
essentially. And that was
Yeah.
I'd say that was a big moment for me professionally too, because I realized that's just who I am as a person. So I'm like, that's going to bleed over. So I'm going to have the same experience in my work as well. And if I don't kind of be more conscientious on the front end, I'm going to end up
Right.
really disappointed because never feel like I ever made it.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing too, is, wherever you go or whatever you do, you take yourself with you. So
mm,
that's kind of the thing is, oh, people are like, oh, if I lost that weight, I'd be happy. Or like, if
mhm,
I made that 100K, I'd be different. And like, yeah, don't get me wrong. Those are tangible changes to your life.
mhm,
Like those are things to be celebrated. And, to some degree, whatever, if that's part of your, plan for your life and what is going to bring you happiness, great. I'm not disparaging people from any kind of ambition, but like my wife and I did the same thing. We moved to New Zealand for 8 months because that was like the
mm.
dream, right?
Yeah,
Before we
yeah,
had
okay.
my son, we wanted to go live abroad. And when we were there, thankfully, we had the presence of mind to be like, this is like a blink of our lives that we need
Mm-hmm.
to like keep our eyes open for as long as we can. But it's so easy, you know, like we moved into this house in October
Okay.
of last year. And already, you know, you still find yourself back on realtor.com, you know, looking through and like, oh, like, wow,
What?
that place is cheap. So it's like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
never
okay.
ending.
Okay.
And I think that's why some of the most deeply unhappy people are also the most ambitious, because they never learn how to like
Yeah.
not settle, but how to find contentment. That's a good lesson for anyone at any stage to learn.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. Thank you so much for kind of sharing that and letting us in a little bit into your experience. Um, and that's awesome. We haven't made it out to New Zealand yet. Where were you living?
Oh man, most amazing place. New Zealand's like next to Canada, like my favorite place on planet. Like Canada's home. I have to like it because I was born here, and it actually is like such a wonderful place.
Yeah.
But we were living in a beach town called Papamoa.
Okay.
It's just outside of Mount Maunganui, which is just outside of Tauranga, which is on the North Island.
Awesome.
So, I mean, everybody we know outside of Canada is like, oh, you should go to the South Island because they're like,
Hmm.
oh, the mountains and all that. I'm
Yeah.
like, that's Canada. Like, we don't want
Yeah.
like mini
I
Canada.
know.
Like, we,
Yeah.
we want
Hmm.
something different. And don't get me wrong, the South Island's amazing too. But we lived, so at the time, my wife and I didn't have my son. My friend Brandon and his wife came with us. He was working for himself. And so we rented this house right on the beach in
Oh, wow.
Papamoa, because between the two families, it worked out to being the same, basically the same cost of rent as what we each had at home. So we lived there. That was our home base. We bought a Honda. Now, what was it called? I have to find the name now. I can't think of it. But this like Honda like weird van thing. We named it Crumpy, and we just like drove
Okay.
all over, put 20,000 kilometers on it
Oh
in
man,
the
that's
time we were
awesome.
there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
But yeah, amazing place. We have such good friends there. I can't wait to go back when all of this is over.
when's all this? That's great. Um, do you feel like had you done much traveling before that?
Yeah, that's one of the things I've been super, super lucky and blessed with in my life is I grew up. So my dad's an optometrist.
Okay.
And my mom was an accountant for oil companies. And then after
Mm.
she became my dad's. At the time, it was his company, so his practice. She became his accountant. So growing up, I mean, I'm the very first to say we grew up privileged. Like we didn't have a lavish like huge house, like
Mhm.
any like material stuff so much, but we were safe, we were comfortable, we never had to worry about like like food, any like what a
Mhm.
lot of people deal with growing up we just didn't have, which
Yeah.
I didn't choose that. It just was given to me, and that's incredible. One of the
Mhm.
things that my parents were always awesome with, and the whole reason they give you that backstory is they didn't go after material stuff. We
Mm.
traveled. That's what
Yeah,
we
okay.
did. So
Wow.
before I was like 15, I'd been to every province in Canada except Quebec. We didn't
Wow.
spend any time there. But I'd been out to the Maritimes, and we'd done road trips, and so that was really cool.
Okay.
Um, and then we traveled a little bit through the States, and it was always important to my dad to like give back. So um, he's still alive. I shouldn't say that like he's not around. He's
Yeah,
there.
yeah, okay.
But when he was working, I mean, he always wanted to be giving, and so we did trips to like Nicaragua. Where we were doing eye care trips. And as a kid, we would
Wow.
help out run the clinics during the
Mhm.
day. And then, for a week or two after, we'd go have like a family vacation in the country and
Okay.
that sort of thing. So Nicaragua, Belize, that type of thing. So I was really fortunate to travel like a fair bit growing up. That was really
Mhm.
important to my family. And then that's something that my wife and I have been really fortunate to share, like a mutual love of kind of
Mhm.
seeing the world and checking things out. And so, yeah. And especially I've been fortunate too with speaking. If I get a
Mm.
gig somewhere, that's like the cheapest we're ever going to see that place.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
even if
yeah.
it's like Minnesota, we're like, all right, woohoo, Minnesota.
Okay.
We'll go down together. A little less now with kid in the
With the
picture,
little
but
one, yeah, okay.
um, yeah.
Okay, wow, that's awesome. And so then transitioning, I guess, a bit out of, well, I guess it's very still relevant, but we'll see, getting in a bit more to the kind of copy marketing side of things. Was
Right.
there a particular experience or kind of thing moment that you've had that has impacted your work, how you view copy, or kind of the perspective that you have with copy?
Oh, there's been so many.
Okay.
But
That's
I think to
awesome. Yeah.
isolate a few,
Uh-huh.
I mean, because I'm trying to learn all the time, right? And the
Okay.
more that you read or expose yourself to or work on, the better you get, and
Hmm.
and the more that you learn, right? So for example, something that shaped my view of copy early on is I was always like, I never wanted to be in direct response of any kind. So my
Mhm.
friend Jay, I left my agency to go into content writing. I was doing like blog posts, ebooks, and stuff at that time. He's like, dude, you should be doing direct response. I'm like, no, direct
Mhm.
response is like shady, dude. It's like,
Yeah.
at the time, my whole perception of it was that it
Okay.
was this like pulling the wool over people's eyes. And all I had seen of it was like these hideous sales pages selling like crappy products with
Mhm.
15 different fonts and highlights all over, and shady stuff like diabetes quote unquote cures, and I wanted nothing to do with it. Like I
Mhm.
didn't see myself as a salesman, because of another experience, which I'll share in just a second.
Okay.
Um, but I didn't see myself as a salesman. I never wanted to have anything to do with like manipulating people in like a
Mhm.
greasy way. So I was just like, no, this is not for me. Like, no, thank you. I was also intimidated by it because, when you have to put your money where your mouth is, when your copy is responsible for moving a product, that's a totally different thing than when the goal is like to entertain. And I knew I was good at like
Mhm.
entertaining and educating, but the whole selling piece, my
Yeah, okay.
confidence was like rock bottom on that, which I'll
Mhm.
talk about again in a second. But when I came across Joanna Weave's work, it was like
Mhm.
the gears started shifting in a different direction, because for the
Okay.
first time, I saw someone who was all about the work, like
Mhm.
had done the work, was doing it in a way that like ethically I looked at, I'm like, holy crap, there's like a whole corporate application of this. Like this is
Mhm.
not just for like supplements and lawnmower companies and weight loss. Like this is this is a whole like field that
Mhm.
combines the things I actually love. Like I love, understanding how people make decisions, and I love creativity in writing, and I grew to love, the basics of analytics, ins and outs, and like that whole, when I worked
Mhm.
as an SEO agency side. So seeing Joanna's work and then learning from her, that was like a pivotal moment for me where
Mm.
I realized, no, it's not actually about deceiving people. It's not about manipulating people so much as it is taking the momentum they have, the desires they have, and channeling that into, if you're a good person, into things that will actually benefit them.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
my job is not pushing bad products on people. It's helping them find the right solution, if that's the solution for them.
Mhm.
So that was super pivotal. I think the other quick one that really changed my perspective was the HubSpot project, because up until that point, I
Mhm.
respected design as a field, but it was never like, and I knew enough to be dangerous, I guess, to like do a rough wireframe. But in
Mhm.
working with Austin Knight at HubSpot, you really,
Wow.
for me, it was the first time I saw the impact of like what an amazing designer can do with copy,
Mm.
how I, as a copywriter, can, by investing in understanding design, make myself and my work better. So that whole project and the insanity surrounding it, the crazy timeline, all of that stuff, and having to work in such close proximity with the designer, that really shaped my approach to things now,
Mhm.
and like how I go about projects now. And then I mentioned it twice, so I'll quickly answer the question of like why I didn't think I was a salesperson. Is
Mhm.
because I had taken a job, like a summer job,
Okay.
just before I went to the agency, fell into the agency, I should say,
Yeah.
um, where I was working for family in Toronto. And I thought the role was going to be like, oh, writing ads and like writing, marketing stuff for magazines, whatever. I was so naive and stupid. I had like no clue what I was getting into. When I
Mhm.
got there, the job was actually like business to business, like cold calling,
Okay.
which I suck at. I can't cold call at
Oh
all.
no.
Not
Mhm.
because I just like, it's not how I'm made up. I take everything personally, right? So if
Yeah.
someone's like, I don't want that, you're an idiot. Then
Yeah.
like for the rest of the day, I'd be like, oh, why does everyone hate me? Like, it's just not how I'm made up.
Okay.
Um, and so I took this job, and like in retrospect, I didn't actually suck. Like I did okay, but at the time it was just this like crushing blow where I was like, oh, I'm terrible at all of this. And like, that to me was sales. I was like, well, if I can't sell industrial labeling machines, I can't sell anything.
Mhm.
Um, it's funny how that, experience can get warped. So it wasn't until later that I realized, like, hey, when I'm educating, I'm selling ideas.
Mm.
When I believe in the thing that I'm selling, it's easy for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
selling my content business, like that was easy for me in terms of like selling what I was doing. So, the things, the field that I'm in now is like the last place I thought I'd wind up, but in,
Yeah.
hindsight being 2020, it's the perfect place for me to be.
No, yeah, okay. Wow, that's awesome. There's so many different things that have come out of that little your answer there that I want to follow up on. So it's tried hard to just pick one. But I think before we get into the kind of direct response, I guess maybe talk about a couple of the other things there. So yeah, the one thing you were talking about is how working with the designer really impacted you. And I could definitely, I can see that copywriters do tend to get very proud of their skill set. And especially because words ultimately tend to be what actually motivate people to take action.
Right.
But there are a lot of other very important components and powerful parts of any layout that is more than just the words. And so I thought that was really cool when you brought that up. And then what exactly with design, kind of, you said you saw how you kind of execute your copy. Can you share, like, in a tidbit or something, like ways that you kind of change through interacting with the designer?
Yeah, I mean, in copy, so like again, I always respected designers. It just wasn't a field that I like understood or like work closely with. So it's like I know it's important, but like designers do design, I'll do
Okay.
my copy. Hopefully, we pull in the same direction, kind of thing. So it was never
Okay.
animosity. It was just like, but for me, it was things like seeing the way that Austin could take a message
Mm-hmm.
and design directly impacts. Hopefully, I remember them all now. But like
That's
when
right.
I give like workshops to like students and stuff, I talk about there's 3 C's that design directly impacts: clarity, like how clear is the message,
Mm.
how it's presented; um, cognition, like whether or not they understand it, whether or not, like, clarity is one thing in terms of like, do they see it, do
Mm-hmm.
they absorb it, but cognition is like, do they get it, right? Like with design, you can actually help illustrate a concept, you can help make it clearer beyond just the clarity of like, okay, it's there to be seen. And then so clarity, cognition, and comprehension in terms of like, okay, like I putting all the pieces together. So that maybe I've butchered that in my mind, but basically what I saw was Austin could take what I'd written
Mm-hmm.
and by way of presenting it different ways, change the way it would be perceived. So, I mean, in writing, we talk about like bullets all the time. Bullets are
Mm-hmm.
our mainstay. We write a lot to bullets. But when you're writing for a software and there's this huge visual component where it's like they need to be able to digest like what it can do for them, how that function might actually work in reality, there's things that design can do that words
Mm-hmm.
can't. Like words can paint a picture in your mind, design can literally paint a picture. Like they can
Yeah,
show
yeah,
you the
yeah.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or even in terms of organization, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we think often through to in terms of like buckets, like, oh, I'll have like 3 side-by-side buckets to like illustrate the 3 like core benefits. But the flourishes that design can bring to that, or the ways they can make these things interactive, like for example, we didn't do it with HubSpot, but with Varonis, another company that I've worked with in the past, they have a pretty complex uh, offering. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's tough to digest. There's a lot to kind of process. So in the absence of design, a lot of it would read like a tech spec sheet, or like
Wow.
it'd
Okay.
be tough to like paint a scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas what they've done on one of their pages now is like they have the actual interface of, or like a storyline, and then they have these
Mm.
things you can mouse over. So instead of just bullets or features, as a writer, I can see, oh, we're talking about this part of the tool, and I can tell a story now that's coordinated with the visual to
Wow.
kind of
Okay.
communicate the point in a different way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's tools in my toolkit so that now where traditionally I would have thought, oh, this should be bullets, or oh, this should be buckets.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can go, oh, if the designer can do something interactive with this, we can present this information in a totally different way. We can pull in the same direction, so that it's not on me to paint the whole picture, and it's not on design to just like lump things together. Like, I think the biggest lesson I took away, or what it affirmed for me, is like, design is not decoration.
Okay.
Design is communication.
Okay.
Design
Wow.
is
That's
the
awesome.
message, right? So when you know more about how designers do their thing and think about it, you can incorporate that back into the way you structure, organize, write, tell your story, all of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really awesome. And then with you made a little side comment kind of about the way that we can misconstrue failures, I guess, with your first, when you were what was that? You were selling machinery?
Industrial labeling machines.
Ah, yeah. Oh my
Right.
goodness. And I guess when you said that you weren't, you necessarily don't take to criticism too well. I definitely relate
Right.
to that. I struggle not, I don't struggle a lot. I'm trying to like, I'm just not, I like making people happy. So it's really hard for
Right.
me when I don't make people happy.
Right.
I'm pretty heartless kind of as a person, but I actually care a lot about not hurting others. Like,
Right. Right.
like I'm emotional with my wife. She's like, "You just don't even care. You have a heart of stone." And I'm like, "I do, but also I'm a little sad that I've disappointed you."
Right.
So,
Right. I
uh,
mean, for me, it was, like, beyond just wanting to be like I can, in terms of my copy, I think one of the important, for anyone getting into conversion copy, you have to realize you need to be confident in what you're writing and have rationale for it and be
mhm,
able to defend it,
okay.
but you can't come with an ego.
Mm,
Like, I can't get all uppity and be like, oh, I don't want design to change anything, because you have to, like, your best written test, or the thing you're most confident in, often will be the one that fails.
yeah,
And
okay.
so you have to get used to the idea that, like, that's part of what I love about it, is there's this creative problem solving. But
Mhm,
with cold calling, I would take every rejection like a rejection of me,
mhm,
instead of like a rejection of the product, which I barely
mm,
knew how to sell, or, a rejection of like the company or whatever. And underpinning that was just a lack of confidence. Like, I can sell in copy because I'm confident, and
mm,
I know why I do the things I do with
mhm,
my copy. I know why I wrote it that way, so I could defend it.
mhm.
With an industrial labeling machine, I mean, I had no confidence in any of that. They're like, oh, what's the term? Da, da, da. I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm sorry for wasting, and just like,
I'm sorry, that's not that.
you're
And
like,
it
I'm
hangs
sorry,
up. Yeah.
and that's the thing, right? So, definitely, like, I want to make people happy. There's nothing feels better than when you send off a draft and the client's like, we love this, no changes. What
Mhm.
almost feels better now is when they do push back and I can defend what I've done and get them to see my side.
Yeah, okay, wow. Mhm. And that was really powerful that you said kind of the one that you feel most confident in, or your favorite, will most likely not perform the best.
Right.
Um, yeah, I see that. I don't know, it's almost like I've learned to, and I work a lot in email marketing, and so I split test basically all of the emails that I send out. And at this point, I've gotten a lot better at kind of using experience as an indicator of what's going to perform better. But
Right.
over the journey, it's definitely been a lot of me being like, this is awesome. People are going to love this. And then the
Right.
like lame version being the one that performs better. And then
Yeah.
it's just like, oh no, good thing I
Yeah.
ran that as a split test and just didn't like send it out to
Yeah.
the
And
whole list.
totally. That's the thing that I'm more so saying, is like, sometimes the things that you're just like, oh, this is like so innovative, or like, I love this line. You get, I think as copywriters, we get too precious sometimes about the
Okay.
things we've done. So like, oh, this is so wonderful. I mean, the market decides, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
sometimes, hate to say it, sometimes boring is best.
Hmm.
Like, sometimes you can have this incredible, fun to read, really interesting copy, and something awful, comparatively dry, will crush it, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, it's not that we're blindly guessing. We always have rationale and reasons for why we think a test is going to work, and so on. But I think that's part of the fun, is the capacity to still be surprised, and then to wonder why, and then to learn why.
Yeah.
And if we knew all the time what was always going to perform best, I mean, we'd all be billionaires. That'd be fantastic. But
Yeah.
also, I think I'd get a little bored.
Yeah, I think so. Are you inherently a pretty investigative person?
Um, to the degree that, like, I think my investigative side comes out from my, like, at times harmful perfectionism, because I want to
Okay.
know it all, right?
Okay.
Like I want to feel like I know what I'm talking about, and what, like, I have a good reason for the things that I do or the way that I write. So
Hmm.
I'm investigative in that, like, like, I want to understand. I'm curious, I would say. Like, I want to know and have good reasons to back up, like, what I do. And I get excited at a good mystery. But, like, in my work, that's definitely present. But then in other areas of life,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's, like, always the case. Like, for example, if I'm gonna go out and buy, like, a new pair of headphones,
Mm-hmm.
like, my investigative journey is pretty short. It's like, hey, these ones have good ratings and someone I know liked them. Like, I'm done. I'm not the guy who's gonna, like, take apart the radio to understand how it works. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Wow.
But
All
when
right.
there's a mystery to solve, then I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, let's get into it.
Grab the Scooby snacks. We're going in.
Right.
Okay. That's really cool. So then I'm thinking it's more so something that you've come to recognize is valuable within your work, then that you to tease out and kind of look for answers. Is that so you can identify, or do you build off of what you learn for future things? Is that kind of what it is, or is it pretty isolated?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. I mean, like, you always want to take lessons from the past where you can. I think the
Hmm.
danger is, like, a lot of people in conversion copywriting, they just want it to be paint by, even if they don't admit it,
Okay.
especially people new to the field, they want it to be like paint by numbers. They want it to
Hmm.
be like, oh, here's a framework, and if you just put in the right words, it'll convert every time.
Hmm.
And the danger with that is, like, experience is a fantastic teacher, but context is like a brutal mistress. Like, if
Hmm.
you bring the right experience to the wrong context, you're screwed. And a perfect
Hmm.
example of that is, like, if I take the lessons, like, the principles might apply across the two. Like, if I take
Hmm.
the lessons from HubSpot, where it's like, okay, the experience there was that the things we
Hmm.
think internally are important aren't always the things that our customers find most
Hmm.
important. That was one of the things we learned by experience there. That's a
Yeah.
lesson that I need to follow and use as a tool. But if
Hmm.
I bring that to a new situation and make that the assumption that, like, no, like, what we think is important is not important, and don't validate that or go through the
Hmm.
process of, like, finding that out, then I'll make decisions based on past experience that can actually hurt me. Where
Yeah.
if I've
Okay.
learned in the past, like, oh, we reduced this page from being really long to really short, and now it converts way better. If I bring that absent of context into the next project, and my default recommendation is, oh, we need to shorten this page,
Hmm.
then we make a huge mistake, right? It's the
Yeah.
same. This is like a weird parallel, but, like, this is the classic reason, for example, like, heat mapping software, right? If you've ever seen heat mapping, what it does, it
Mm-hmm.
shows you how far down people have read the page. The danger with heat mapping software is that you mentally start assuming that them getting to the end of the page is good and them dropping off somewhere is bad. Like, it becomes this
Wow.
mental,
Okay.
like, switch
Hmm.
you flip. But with the homepage, that's not true, because they could, like, log in, they could, like, click into, like, the offer,
Hmm.
they could disappear. So if you bring, like, the right idea to the wrong context, it can really damage you. So I want to build up this wealth of experience, but
Hmm.
more important, I want to expose myself to a whole bunch of different contexts,
Yeah.
so that that experience either bears out or have different tools to draw on. And I think that's really, when you look at, like, the masters, that's
Hmm.
really what separates them, is they've got all the same tools we do. They've got all the
Yeah.
same frameworks. They just know which ones to use when, or when to break a rule.
Hmm.
They know all the rules so that they know when to break them. And so that's kind of the difference, is, like, experience and context have to, like, jibe. You can't
Hmm.
just take your experience around with you everywhere you go.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And I mean, something that I'm kind of learning, it seems like that you've said too, is just like, and maybe a potential challenge, I guess, in the copywriting world is it just takes a while to like get experience and like like there are some things you can really only learn from just doing it and then seeing it go poorly or go well or seeing
Right.
the reaction. And there are some ways that you can't really like you can't teach experience, I guess, in some ways.
Right. I mean, like every conversion copywriter should run a survey at least once in their career,
Okay.
because you're going to be amazed at how like subtle differences in like the way you ask a question
Hmm.
influence the data you get in, right?
Yeah.
That's something you can only learn by doing. Like when I do workshops or when I like teach trainings or whatever, I'll share the questions I've asked. And
Hmm.
people are like, yay, hooray. And they'll go ask the same questions. And that's great. Like oftentimes that one question is a byproduct of having asked 5 other questions or asked that question 5 other ways,
Hmm.
right? Like, so that's the thing is like you can read all the great books about copywriting you want in the same way that you can read a driver's manual all you want, but until you
Hmm.
get behind the wheel of a car and drive the thing, you don't know how to drive. You
Yeah.
know how to drive, but you don't know how to drive.
Yeah. Okay. Look at that emphasis. So important there. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak with me and share a little bit. I do have kind of one maybe more lighthearted, fun marketing question as we head out here. Um, is there a marketing tactic that you hate and would wish die?
Oh, you know what? If you had asked me this a year ago, my response would be different than it is now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Um, so something that I've learned
Hmm.
for myself is the stuff that pisses me off. Like there's the stuff that's like clearly unethical or
Yeah.
like
Okay. Mm.
awful. But like like I used to get pissed off all the time. It would make me like angry to go into my like Facebook feed and I'd see like the typical like guru video, right? Where it's
Yeah.
like, hey, here's me and my gorgeous wife, and like we quit our day jobs and
Yeah.
now we run Facebook ads and we have a yacht. And like
Yeah.
I still hate that for myself,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
But I think the bigger lesson for me has been to ask myself, what do I hate about this? Do I hate that this is here or do I hate that this works?
Mm.
Because
Hmm.
if it didn't work, would so many people keep throwing dollars at it, right?
Yeah.
Like if this wasn't paying dividends, we'd see people stop doing this, and eventually
Hmm.
over time we will. But the better question to ask when you see a marketing tactic that you hate is, number one, be honest about it. Does it work?
Hmm.
And if it does work, then the best question you can ask is not, like, how do I get it out of my life, but why?
Mm.
Why does it work? What's going on in this thing that I hate that I
Hmm.
can take out of this thing I hate, adapt, and use in a way that I like? So
Yeah.
while
Wow.
I'll never do a guru video myself,
Hmm.
it's helpful for me to understand what makes that successful so I
Hmm.
can do it in a less douchey way. So that's like a very like different kind of answer. So yes, I hate the guru video. I mean, that's like the marketing tactic I wish would go away. But at the
Hmm.
same time, I think find the stuff you hate, ask why you hate it, and if it works, learn from it instead of devoting a whole bunch of energy to just be like, I hate that thing. Same thing with pop-ups, man. Like, why do people hate pop-ups? In theory, everyone's like, I hate pop-ups. I'll
I
never
know.
click a
Yeah.
pop-up. I hate
Yeah.
ads. I'll never click a Google ad.
I
Well,
know.
there's a multi-billion-dollar business built on people clicking Google ads. Somebody's clicking them.
I know. Yeah.
And if at some point that somebody will be you, and pay attention to that moment, because then you're like, it got me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's, you know, there's a reason pop-ups persist, right? Like 100% of people will self-report, I hate pop-ups, but yet somehow they're driving conversions and revenue. So
Yeah.
why does it work, right? Ask
Yeah.
that question first.
I do. I love that because for a long time, I mean, no one from in my kind of old circle understands copywriting. I didn't even know what it
Right.
was. And I have a degree in communications, and I still like hadn't really heard of that. So um, yeah, I just basically would tell people like, those emails you get that you hate so much, from companies, and like I'm like, oh, I write those. I write those. I send those out for people, and everyone's like, oh my goodness, I hate those. Like, I never buy anything from those. And I was like, you probably don't, but someone does, because companies are making 10 to 30% of their monthly revenue from that, and then everyone's like jaw just like drops open, and it's like,
Yeah.
and also you're lying, but you
I
have at
mean,
some point.
people love to hate ClickFunnels, right? They see the
Yeah.
ClickFunnels ads in their feeds. They're like, oh, this copy's so hypey. I'll never write that way. And it's like, that's fine. But Russell Brunson is making much more money than you are. Like, like if he's not an idiot,
I
if
know.
this wasn't working, they'd pull it, right?
Yeah.
So the more productive question is just
Mm.
like, why in this context does this work? How do I take a lesson out of this into the context I do like? Like, you never have to be Russell Brunson. You never have to run a pop-up. You never have to do the things you hate. That's not what I'm suggesting.
Mhm.
But when you understand why or
Mhm.
the mechanics of it, then at least you can hate it for the right reason and
Yeah.
get something productive out of it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Joel. This has been very insightful, and I'm excited to share this. As we close, do you have kind of any ways that you encourage people to connect with you, or anything going on that you'd like people to know about?
I mean, so probably Twitter is where I'm like most active. Facebook, I mean, I really prefer if people send me an actual human note with a request, because I get so many requests,
Mm.
and then I get these like half-hearted like, what challenge do you see in your business message? I'm like, I'm not adding you, like 100%. That's a tactic I hate,
Yeah.
actually, is the like half-hearted pitch through message. And I
Okay.
don't think that works. I think that
Yeah.
works on such a micro scale that they have to anyway.
Yeah.
So, like you can drop me a message in DM, but Twitter, I mean, you can find me there. LinkedIn, I'm fairly active there.
Mhm.
I accept pretty much every connection request, but do send me a note. In terms of stuff I'm working on, it remains to be seen. I've got like my quarantine, like response plan
Ooh,
all
okay.
underway.
Yeah.
So I've got 2 trainings in the works. One is on building a writing team.
Mhm.
So I get asked all the time,
Wow.
how do you find writers? How do you scale a team? How do you work with them? Working with writers is horrible. I want to shoot myself in the head. That's like how that conversation goes. So
Yeah.
it's designed to kind of solve that problem.
Mhm. That's
Still
awesome.
underway.
Wow.
I'm still working on modules, but I hope to have that out. Hopefully, I mean, it's ASAP, but I'm going to like realistically say sometime in May.
Mhm.
Um, and then in the shorter term, I'm working on revamping. There's a 2-day workshop that I want to put out. I ran it one time in the past, but I'm updating it, adding more resources to it, making it a little bit more intuitive. And it's just a massive crash course on conversion copywriting, the tenets of it,
Mm.
getting into it, how to do that stuff. So I'm hoping to have that out at some point in April. So look at LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever, and I'm sure I'll be talking about it if and when I finally get those out.
Yeah, okay, awesome. That sounds good. Well, thank you again, and I hope that you have a fantastic evening, and I will catch you around online.
Yeah, take care.
All right, bye-bye.